Up the New Zealand Warriors, 13th last season, 9 wins, 14 losses, and 1 draw, minus 62. The losses: Aiden Fanua-Blake, Jazz Tavanga, Marcelo Montoya, Sean Johnson, and Tohu Harris, both retiring. And the recent one, Zion Mayu, I believe I've got that right. Sorry if I haven't, as well. He's just recently signed with the Bulldogs. The gains: James Fisher-Harris, the huge one from the Panthers. Jet Cleary from the Panthers, if anyone's forgotten about that one. They got the young Cleary over there. Motu Pasikala, just an upgraded deal. Aaron Clark from the Titans, Sam Healy from the Sharks, and Tana Boyd from the Titans. Trav, steer us where you would like to go down the Warriors path for 2025.
James Fisher-Harris is not enough. So the point is, they've now lost Tohu, huge loss. They've lost Johnson, huge loss. They have lost AFB, enormous loss. James Fisher-Harris is not enough. Is my point that I wanted to sort of touch on straight away. Still so many questions around what's going to happen. I think they've just lost too much leadership. I think they've just lost too much power in what they can have. I think they've got dudes that I think can sort of step into the roles. I don't know if they can. Well, I don't think they can recover. And I think this year is going to be a really big finding year and find themselves year that's going to have a lot of questions needed to be answered. For where those roles and who takes on those roles. So my point that I'd like to discuss to start off with is James Fisher is not enough.
Very valid point, in my opinion. And when you mentioned just those 3 names, they are losses from any team in the comp. You'd sitting there going, wow, like if they're let's say they were hypothetically a top 8 team last year, you're probably saying straight away, probably bottom 4. That's a huge loss in talent-wise, experience as well. It's something that you can't go past when you look at this and you look into this year for the Warriors. I don't know where they go from it, because obviously the interview got to do with Cameron George last week. If you haven't already, check it out. He goes into great detail with a lot of this sort of stuff. He rightly pointed out that they're looking at inside instead of recruiting to fill a lot of these roles, which he's got massive raps on their juniors coming through. He said finally from post this COVID, they're finally coming the other side of it, which is awesome to hear from the club point of view. We all know for a long time now they've had some really exciting juniors. They've continually got players from Union who are wanting to be leagueies, which is great to hear. It's just a lot of pressure. That's 3 huge names for the Warriors club and have been for a number of years now. Johnson's like a god for them over there. He's immense. Tohu's been the definition of a warrior, and AFB he just turned the way forwards played on its head the last 18 months. It's just been ridiculous to watch, and to miss that intimidation, that dog that he has, I think will be huge for the Warriors. And look, I know they're replacing with James Fisher-Harris, who will bring that winning mentality from the Panthers, and that's so exciting for them to have there. And he's been huge so far for them. But at the same time, they want the whole club to do it. They don't want it to be on James Fisher-Harris's shoulders. I look at the playing roster there, and I'm just worried that they're not ready yet. It's like it's a 12-month project, in my opinion. And it's sort of like this year's one of those years where you go, let's just build, James. Let's get this team going and have your influence and get these youngsters ready. And we'll promise you next year we'll have the right people behind you. We can go a lot harder next year. Jake?
Yeah, this is a. I'm going to agree with the points that you guys have said, and realistically, that's pretty much what I sort of see happening. What I'll do is I'll play a bit of devil's advocate here to try and make it a little bit different. Last year, there was a bit of time there where Sean Johnson was out. And I'd say his form, obviously, last year wasn't his best, but he had injuries and he was playing through a lot of, I think it was a calf injury or something like that. So it's fair enough. But what I will say is when Tamari Martin got put in control of that team at 7, he crushed it. He absolutely crushed it. And and same sort of thing goes for before he got injured last year as well, was Metcalf at 6 last year. And obviously he was going along with SJ, but he was crushing it as well before he got injured as well. So they both at different times last year had crazy form. And to play a little bit of devil's advocate, if they can both sort of find that form together, they could be a very strong halves combination potentially. I saw they did they put out the trials like team list, the Warriors, and they actually had them swapped. So they had Metcalf playing in 7 and Tamari Martin playing in 6, which they might just be trialing to see how that sort of goes in the game or whatever. That's what trials are for. You don't know that's going to be in the end of it. But I think that those two as well, in addition to obviously James Fisher-Harris, I think what he brings isn't necessarily just what he brings on the field. It is that leadership role. That's what SJ kind of did, and especially what Tohu did. Tohu Harris he was just that, like when they were down and all their chips were down, that's where he was. He was just that, I'm going to just keep going. He very much reminded me, like he's kind of like Gutho, just that engine room of just like, I'm going to be the one. I don't give a crap whether we're losing 40-0. I'm just going to keep pushing. And I think James is very similar to that for them. So I think that if their halves can fire, that they could be okay. I don't personally think that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm just trying to play, a little bit of devil's advocate to be on the other side of it.
You make valid points. You do, because as much as I love SJ, his career, and the player we got to all watch as we grew up, and we're all sort of similar sort of ages here, so we've all watched we can all vividly remember his debut all the way through to when he retired. And apart from that second half against the Sharkies last year, that last round, SJ's season was probably one of his worst. Like, we've got to be honest about it, but he just was not there, and probably played into why he did retire at the time he did. And it sucks to say, like, that's been a huge fan of his, but you're right. Like, Tamari Martin showed that he's ready to take the reins, I felt like, and they played better as a side whenever SJ wasn't there, which was so weird to see. And it felt like, even going back at my home point, whenever they had less experience, like that Magic Round performance sticks out to me when they played against the Panthers. They actually played their better football. They had an energized team. They were looking hungry. They wanted the ball. They were damaging players. Like, they went back to that Warrior style where you finish the game and you hear the opposition saying, I can hardly walk. Like, my body's hurting. It just felt like that. But then once the experience came back, it sort of went to a different sort of team. So maybe this inexperience that they're talking about, and that Cameron George and the club has such high hopes on, maybe it is valid. Maybe they've just got some of these really good kids that, because maybe we're not in New Zealand, we don't get to hear a lot of the news over there, that are just ready to rip and tear and just to fire. And it might lead the Warriors to where we're talking about this new style of league and how it's played. They've got a whole bunch of players or forwards ready to rip and tear and play this sort of style.
Yeah, I'd say, there's always that chance. You can never go into a season, obviously, like one being 100% certain of what will happen, and anything can happen. Maybe that injection of youth, kind of similar to the Eels, maybe that injection of youth does make a difference to them. They've got a very young, exciting sort of group of people, I guess. One other thing I sort of do want to mention, and I still believe this is the case, is that RTS should be at fullback. I've said it all of last year, and I'm sorry, but Roger Tuivasa should be at the back. You can disagree if you want. I'm right. RTS should be at the back.
You're right.
Still picky. I'd be going so picky.
I'll admit Tuipuki's a weapon, though. He is. He's an absolute weapon, but I think he could learn off RTS for at least another year. I think he could learn off RTS for one more year, but it looks like they're, at least for the trial, they're putting him on the wing. So
my only worry with that is the balance of the side. I think it works better with Tuipiki at the back, because I think you need all three of them in your team. And in my opinion, that means Tuipiki fullback, RTS on the wing, who can still float around and do damage and have that first or second run, which would be huge for him, and then Chance in center. And I feel like that's their best balance, because I don't think Tuipiki can play any other position apart from fullback for that side.
I agree. I actually totally agree, which is where my next point was the fullback battle, because I think whoever gets the fullback battle has major effects on what happens with the rest of the list. So and you touched on it very, very well. I think Tuapiki has to be their number one, although everything that I can read and every predicted lineup has Chance Nickel Clockstad at fullback, and Tuapiki's not even on the list. So that just does my head in. I think Tuapiki's their fullback. I think Dalamatine is the number 2. I think Chance is the number 3. Rogers the number 4. So I just think that's how it has to sort of line up, in my opinion, and go from there.
I will say this: if I saw those 3 like in those positions, so first of all, I think RTS as a winger over a center personally, like at least as a winger over a center as opposed to anything. Chance as a center, I said all of last year that I thought he should be playing there. He did at least a little bit for the Raiders, and when he played there for the Raiders, from at least the games that I saw, he was a weapon. And if Tuapiki was at the fullback, I would be terrified to see that come as a team. If I was versing them for a lineup, I would be absolutely terrified to see that. And so you're right. I do think that is a very, very strong lineup. And if that was to be the case, and maybe it will happen later on the season, who knows? But that would be very scary. But I think it was Webster last year sort of said, like, we're sticking by Chance. He's going to be our fullback. And I think Chance sort of said, like, he's happy that they kind of have said that about him. I just think that you need to have at least a little bit of flexibility if it isn't working. I just think that if it isn't working,
especially when you've got someone like Tuapiki, like when you've got that talent sitting there, you've got to find a way to get it on the field, and you've got to find a way to put it there and play it. Otherwise, you lose it. Like you either play it or lose it, right? You can't just sit him there and just say it's okay. You can just develop another 12 months, And there's a couple of clubs that are like that.
There's the guy whose team has Farlongo.
That's one of the guys I was referring to. There's only 1 or 2 teams that you can actually sit there and develop somebody like that and say it's okay, and they'll buy into that system. The Warriors is one of them, and I think Tuapiki is one of those players that has to be played. You just have to do it. And I agree with you. Like from my eye, and just as a fan, and let's be honest, all I do is talk shit on a podcast and as a fan. But I think you're right. I think Chance Nickel Clockstad is a better center. I disagree with you with Roger on a wing. I think on a wing he'd be lost. You just wouldn't see what he can do, and how important he would be, and how big he can be if he was on a wing. Hey,
did you see what he used to do for the Roosters?
I like him on a wing. I think
he's good on a wing, man.
Yeah, I know he is. I just think now at this point in his career, with what they've got, I would rather him not on the wing, and I'd put him in a center.
Yeah. I can see that. I just don't think he did much at centre last year. So yeah.
I agree. Again, I think he's better
Union
off the kicks.
Yeah.
Off the kicks, I want him back. I want him taking kicks back against a broken defensive line.
One final point I'll mention just on that forward, those big forwards that they've lost in the experience we're saying they'll miss so much. If there was one forward I could pick in this competition to sign to help me build my club back from that, it's James Harris. So I think they've got the ideal replacement for it. There's a guy that can go there and pretty much scare the shit out of that playing group to make sure they don't slacken off, to make sure they're doing everything they can, plus extras and turning up the right way. And he's achieved everything in this game, plus more. And he's established himself as one of the most respected players, I think, in this competition now. I think every forward out there is probably intimidated by him, which is saying something, because I don't think there's anyone else out there that's probably like that. I think even AFB would say, yeah, I don't really want to burst James Fisher-Harris, but I'll do it, but it's not my ideal target. So I think that's huge to have for the Warriors this year and to build moving forward. He's just the perfect replacement for that. Jake, do you have any other points? But I feel like all our points have sort of been raised as we've spoken on this one.
No, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that, yeah. If you want, I'll give you where I think they're going to go on the
expectation. Yeah,
I don't think they do much different from what they did this year. Unfortunately, I think they sit around the same area in the table. I don't know, upwards 2 or downwards 2 maybe, but I think roughly in the same area. Yeah. Unfortunately,
Trav?
Top half or the bottom half?
He likes this one. There's a pattern coming on here. I will say similar to this year. Potentially a bit further of a slide, awkwardly. But in saying that, there'll be games where we literally are scratching heads, going, where has this Warriors team been? I actually think they'll have some games where we go, wow, that team is like a top 14. It's just going to be one of those years, I feel like, for the